This is the Final Word Daily, the Australia-India Daily, Border-Gavaskar Daily, Geoff Lemon and Bharat Sundaresan, because Adam Collins is in the sick ward having his larynx treated, having lost his voice already. We are on what should be day 4 of the Test match. No play because the Test match is over, Bharat, so I don't need to get you to do a 30-second summary. I do need to note that this show is brought to you by Maurice Blackburn, Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm, and there might be a few plaintiffs in among the Indian supporters who are pretty unhappy with how their team has gone. We've seen a bunch of sack everybody stuff coming from that side, whereas after Perth it was sack the whole Australian team. The blow up that didn't really deserve to have that much profile as a blow up with the Siraj Travis Head thing, which honestly I thought there was very little to that, but there's been a little bit more on that with fines levied and that sort of thing. Give us the rundown of where things have settled with the post-match stuff, the press conferences, the media appearances of the teams before they go to Brisbane.
Firstly, so much has changed between India-Australia relations on and off the field, and we don't even have to go back to the 80s and 90s when men were men and everybody was in each other's face.
When men were men and every band played synthesizers. The 80s.
The 80s indeed, I know. But the 80s is a good time. We both came into this world in the 80s as well, so good things did happen in the 80s. But even go back 10 years, imagine if something like this had happened, the Head-Siraj incident. You knew the next 3 tests there would be a lot of ugliness in terms of not just what happens on the field. The press conferences would be interesting. There would be Indian players snapping at Australian journalists and vice versa. But what I saw with both Rohit Sharma and Pat Cummins was they played it down, and and I was completely with them. Like it wasn't that big an incident. Yes, it was a send off, and Travis Head, you could lip read
pretty easily. Three fairly choice words.
Absolutely. Yes. And so that was that though. Like I didn't expect it to blow over, and as it turned out towards the end, Mohammad Siraj comes out to bat and Travis Head is there. You could see them have a chat, and then they exchanged a hug. I saw some reports call them like a cold hug. You can always read a lot into it the way you want to read into it.
It's better to have a cold hug than no hug, I would have thought.
Yeah, I called it a tight hug because I saw one arm around the waist. Okay. That for me is a tight hug. Yeah.
And I think, the thing for me is that this just was such a non-event where, and the people commentating on it and so on, if they're the Australian team that they were in 20 years ago, that sort of thing would have been said 483 times a day. There was a fair bit of effing and seeing going on at that point in time. It only stands out because it's relatively unusual and because these teams do play a pretty good-natured version of things, and I suppose it's different. 10 years ago, the game here at Adelaide 10 years ago was played in a very genteel spirit because it was with the backdrop of tragedy and loss, and so the teams didn't really want to be seen that way. But there was still some fiery stuff in terms of Mitchell Johnson's bowling and that sort of thing, but generally they were respectful to one another on the field. And I don't know, there was spikiness in 2017 in India, but really after that it hasn't been that case anymore.
It hasn't been, but even going back to that 2014 series, the first day obviously was emotion. It was taken over by emotion. But by day 3, when David Warner batted for the second time, you do remember Varun Aaron bowled him with a no ball, and the next ball went come on, and the next ball David Warner defends and then went come on, and we went to the Gabba, and I remember Australia were behind the game.
Can't wait to get you to the Gabba.
That happened 6 years after that. So they went to the Gabba and Mitchell Johnson was out there. Australia were in trouble, and then Rohit Sharma and a couple of others went after Johnson, and he started swinging his bat, and Australia went ahead. And by the end of that series, every time Virat Kohli walked out to bat, David Warner and Brad Haddon were with him. And I saw a clip this morning where I think Steve Smith says something and Virat Kohli is in his face and David Warner runs down the ground. So things did get heated up even after that emotional start to the series. In 2017, obviously, it got a bit too ugly, like too out of control. But you're right, that was it. After that, 2018-19, obviously this was the first series after Sandpaper Gate, so nobody was going to do anything.
Not the first one. The UAE series was
the first one in
Australia.
In Australia, that is, like in front of the Australian audiences. So, it's been that, which is why even Travis Head said that in the press conference. There was no build up to it. It's not like they were going after each other. That's when you generally say send off, don't you?
Sure. And I mean, actually watching it back, it seemed like Travis Head starting to say what he says before the send off, or before the gesture.
Yeah.
So it was kind of originally presented as there was the gesture and then there was the response to the gesture. Whereas, I don't know if he was responding to a sound or whatever. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, it's all very sort of low-level stuff that probably didn't deserve to spend this long on it at the start of the show, which is counter to us saying that it doesn't matter. But we kind of you end up having to talk about it because that's the way that these cycles of hyping things up go. More importantly, the Indian side heading to Brisbane. Adam and I were chatting about this, that basically the Adelaide Test doesn't really give you any form line indications because it's such a unique set of circumstances. If they go to Brisbane and they get a flat track, which can happen at Brisbane, then does that mean that India's batters come back into the equation again? If it's a spicy sort of pitch doing a lot, does that make it as difficult for India as it was in Adelaide? How do India set up? I mean, I just assumed really that they would go Akashdeep for Adelaide because of the swing, and then bring Rana back for Brisbane because of pace and bounce, right? They stuck with Rana because he bowled so well in Perth, and I suppose they thought that he deserved to keep his spot, which often hasn't been the way that Indian team selection goes. But there is something to be said for not just sticking with the same side all the time. And it's one of the things I like in some ways about Indian setups is they treat the squad is the team, and they mix and match from the squad depending on the conditions. So maybe they've missed a trick there. Does Rana bowled relatively poorly in Adelaide? Does that mean that he's now a chance to miss out on the test he maybe should have played, and Akashdeep is likely to come in, or did they bring in Prasidh Krishna because he's got the height to use as well as some ability to swing the ball? I don't know. How do you see them setting up there?
No, Akashdeep was definitely missed. He could have definitely played the kind of role that Scott Boland did. Similar pace. He skids the ball. He always attacks the stumps, and I thought he bowled superbly in the nets with the pink ball in that twilight period. But like Rohit Sharma said in the press conference, Harshit Rana, you can't drop a player because he didn't do anything wrong, nah? Like he
but they do that all the time.
Exactly right. But Rohit wasn't there for the first test, so he was watching it on TV with his newborn, which is a cute thing. It was very cute the way he described KL Rahul's batting while he was holding his newborn on his couch before he flew to Perth. But I think they did miss a trick. And I would be surprised if they go to Akashdeep for Brisbane because it looks like they've been prepping Prasidh Krishna on the side.
Okay.
And the way he bowls and the way he has bowled in the Australia A, India A games, he could be ahead of Akashdeep when it comes to Brisbane because Rana needs the break.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like the guy at this point in his career who can bowl long spells. And with Bumrah, already there was cramps, they said. I don't know whether it was cramps. He looked more in discomfort than just cramps with his groin. With such short turnaround, they need someone who can bowl them a long spell. That's one reason Akashdeep can come in if they want a stock bowler. Again, like I said, someone in that Scott Boland role. But plenty of things. Though I know you can't read too much in terms of form guide from a pink ball test, but in 4 innings so far in this series, it's just Glenelg Beach. People are relaxed here. In 4 batting innings for India, in 3 of those, the top scorer has been Nitish Kumar Reddy, batting at 7 and 8. So, you read what you want to into it because every time the ball has done a bit, they have struggled. So they've had 3 collapses, and obviously on that hot day when the pitch wasn't doing a lot, they piled on the runs.
Right. So, I mean, Reddy, probably they stick with him because he's been doing a job there. He hasn't offered a lot with the ball, to be honest, but he's been doing enough with the bat. Does he push up? Do they try to get Jadeja into that side? It does seem strange that Jadeja's not there with his batting ability. You can almost forget about his bowling in Australia and then just treat it as a bonus because, it would be handy if you could have someone come on and bowl some very accurate left-arm spin. Yeah, he's not going to be turning it a lot and not going to be getting the same kind of purchase as he would from a home surface, but that's still a pretty useful string to have to your bow. Is there a way to try to get him into the side along with Ashwin? There are so many different configurations they can have with the all-rounders they've got.
And it's one of those things with Nitish Kumar Reddy, right? They brought him in, they wanted him to be the seam bowling all-rounder. I don't think they expected him to be so good with the bat, and now he plays mainly as a batting all-rounder, which I guess they really did not need, because they already have the batting stocks, and whether it's Ashwin or Washington or Jadeja, you already get that batting all-rounder. Or you already have one, not a batting all-rounder, you have an all-rounder already in the side.
Yeah.
But he's batted so well, it's, to quote Rohit again, how can you drop him when he's done well? And he's done so well.
Yeah.
If anything, he's unfortunate to have ended up having to bat with the tail in all three of those innings that I mentioned, where he got 42 or 41. But Jadeja has to come in. I think they've given Washington a go. They've given Ashwin a go here.
Does he come in instead of Ashwin?
That's the only way. I cannot see them, even though before the series, I thought probably they could go in with both spinners and say, we're playing our best bowling lineup. But with Reddy doing what he's done, I can't see both spinners coming in now. I mean, the only way they come in is if Reddy goes out.
Yeah.
So it could well be Washington, Ashwin and Jadeja now at the Gabba.
Here's a question for you. Was India a better side with Rohit Sharma back in it compared to when he was missing?
With the batting form he's been in, which has been pretty woeful in 2024, probably not. He's made the sacrifice. He said, okay, I won't open the batting. I'll come down the order.
Yep.
Which would have worked, I guess, if he was stay in form. This was Rohit from a couple of years ago, where he was just scoring runs for fun.
Potentially, it might also have worked if he'd come in, after the top four had done something of a job and given him a 200-run foundation, and it was the middle of the afternoon, and he was able to face
and
some
not a
spin,
pink ball,
rather than coming in and facing the pink ball going everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And once again, with that decision having been taken, where Rohit said, "I'll drop down the order." And Rahul batted really well in the first innings here as well.
Yeah.
On what basis do you now say no? I mean, you can't. I mean, it would be unlikely that Rohit's failures have to lead to Rahul dropping down.
Yes, you weaken a strength to strengthen a weakness. That old thing. And if they've left Rahul opening the batting after the first test because he played so well in Perth, then it would be inconsistent to then move him after the second just to try to. And it's not going to be easier for Rohit Sharma opening the batting. When the ball's new and doing more potentially, but that's where he would feel comfortable, right? There'd be something about that feeling of compromise from having dropped down. So there'll be a lot of attention on that number 6 spot, and then, you couldn't rule things out. If he has a bad test in Brisbane, I wouldn't be entirely surprised if he goes, you know what, I'm done, and leaves Test cricket on that in that way. It's funny because there are some people who will talk him down so quickly, but then there's the Rohit Sharma that I remember in Test cricket who at times just plays as though he's playing a different game to everybody else. Yeah. The 100 he made in Nagpur against Australia when we were there. The 100 he made against India. These are in home conditions, but on a cracking turning pitch, which was that the one in Chennai, when he makes 163 and nobody else makes more than 30 or 40. It seems he's able to read the ball and to respond to difficult conditions. He makes difficult hundreds when other players can't. So is he the player who can do that in these seeming swinging sort of conditions if that's what they get in Brisbane?
Yeah, I mean, you would back him too. I mean, he is all class, and I can still see him do that in the middle order. Maybe if he does have to bat in the middle order, maybe number 5 is not a bad position. I know Rishabh Pant has made that his own, depending on the top order. And it's one of those things, right? He would have taken that decision to drop down, like you said, Jeff, on the back of or hoping that what we saw in the second innings in Perth happens, and the openers do give it that platform, which to an extent Gill and Rahul had done. And then there was that middle order collapse, which Rohit ended up being a part of, and he walked out with score 4 for 80. But yeah, I mean, I can't see them turning the back on Rohit. If the decision comes, it has to come from him. And look, Adam Collins and I stood not too far away from the dugout yesterday after the match, before the presentation, and Rohit was sat all by himself in the dugout. I just elbowed Adam and I said, "Don't look now. Just look at his face." He had that forlorn look in his face.
Yeah.
He was just looking away. To the extent I felt a little bad for him, so I kind of came in his line of sight and gave him a smile just so that he can feel good about life, as I do. But yeah, it's going to be interesting what happens if India do go down at the Gabba. Isn't it funny that 10 days ago we were saying the same things about Australia? If the batters fail, is it time for Manas? Could it be time for Steve Smith? Well, Steve Smith didn't score runs, but Australia won.
We'll come to Australia just after the break. It is the Final Word Daily. Geoff Lemon and Bharat Sundaresan sitting by the sea at Glenelg. If you're in Adelaide, you can take the tram down here. You can sit under the palm trees. There's a big Ferris wheel. There are happy dogs playing in the fountains. It's a pretty nice day off, or sort of day off, because we're still making this show on what would have been day 4. The Australians wrapped it up in under 2.5 days, less than 7 sessions to win the second test, and it's 1-1. And the show is brought to you also by the Kabaddi tournament that's happening in Melbourne on the 28th of December. And I'm glad I'm talking to you, Bharat, because Adam and I don't necessarily know the most in the world about Kabaddi, but I'm tipping that you're going to know a little bit more than I do about the full body contact mobile fighting sport of India.
Which also involves a lot of tag. Look, I think hockey is obviously India's national sport, but in many parts of the country, Kabaddi is almost the unofficial national sport. And it's a pretty rapid sport. And it used to be back in the day played on mud courts where it was a rustic sport. It kind of represented an old school way of living in India. Then the Pro Kabaddi League happened, and then it's been modernized. Now you have in the last 10, 12 years players in modern costumes and going kabaddi, and that's the thing. I mean, it's a test of everything. It's about tactics. It's a very physical sport. It's contact sport. But just to summarize it, which I really struggle to do in life, like if there's one player from your team, and the whole point is you go into the opposition half and you need to touch at least one of them and run back and not get tagged.
Okay.
While constantly going kabaddi. It's a test of your breathing ability as well. So it's a fabulous sport.
So you can get penalised if you're not speaking.
Yeah. I mean, it's like in footy, if you in Aussie rules football, if you don't bounce the ball after 15 meters, isn't it? Yeah. So that's what it is. You have to go kabaddi.
Okay, the whole time. Amazing. All right. Well, that's happening. So they do have a bunch of footy players, former Aussie rules players mostly, who are in these Kabaddi teams, and they're going to be playing an exhibition match on the 28th of December at John Cain Arena, which is the tennis centre, a stadium, whatever you want to call it, across the road from the MCG. So you could dip back and forth if you're at the cricket, get across to the Kabaddi, and you have to go Kabaddi the whole way across to John Cain Arena, or they don't let you in. That's just the way it works. The Australian side, I mean, not a huge amount to talk about because, it's Australia. Don't change a winning team. Presumably Hazelwood won't be back. Presumably Boland stays on. Do we have any visibility on that?
I mean, he did a fitness test today at the Adelaide Oval.
He's bloody good at the Gabba. You like Hazelwood at the Gabba?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. I mean, even if he's 95% fit, he plays. And like I said, he had a bowl today at the Adelaide Oval. He spoke to the press. So I think this was official fitness test. And from all reports, he bowled 2 spells today on the centre wicket. That's good signs when you're 3-4 days out from the test. And after having missed those tests for those in that 18-month period, I don't think Josh Hazelwood would want to miss even a single one. So I'll be pretty confident to say that he will play the Gabba. Okay.
The players who were under question after Perth, you start with Nathan McSweeney and Marnus Labuschagne, who each made a score that helped Australia get out of trouble. They didn't make a big score. They made the kind of scores that will buy them exactly 2 innings of breathing space, I think. If they do 2 more failures and people will be back on it. You can, the half century never buys you much latitude. I remember Steve Waugh's retirement year, and he kept making 50s, and everyone was saying, oh, well, he hasn't made 100 in X amount of time. It didn't matter that he was making 50 and then 70 and then 80. That didn't count because it wasn't 100. So, but they'll get one set of failures at Brisbane, and then there'll be talk back about them for Melbourne unless they do make runs in the next couple of outings.
I mean, again, the only thing I will do is, if you put those 2 innings into context, though, it was the 39 from McSweeney and the 63 from Marnus that allowed Travis Head to walk out to bat at a time when the ball was soft and he could complete.
Important innings, no doubt. I'm just saying they won't give you much runway.
No, not at all. No, especially not from the external voices that cricketers like to talk about.
The noise. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise. Some of it coming from inside this room. What do you want us to say? If a guy's made more than 10 one time in 10 innings, that's not. We're just saying what's happening. We're just reporting it. Like those are the numbers, right?
No,
We didn't
exactly.
invent
Those are
that.
facts. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's till the time nobody makes it personal. Like,
Imagine we like all of the touring press. We all sit down in Adelaide and we're like, let's get Marnus.
yeah,
let's get him.
We don't do
You
that,
know?
to be honest. Like, yeah, we talk about. I mean, like most people talk about cricket. Jeff and I don't talk about cricket.
No, we try to find other things.
Yeah,
to
we talk about the Shawshank Redemption. Yeah,
Yeah,
So-
mostly. Some birds are not meant to be caged.
Indeed.
Their feathers are just too bright.
Yeah, I wish I could. Anyway, let's not get.
I don't think any birds are meant to be caged. Maybe just don't cage birds.
Jake wasn't meant to be caged.
No,
though.
no. True.
Jake did fly
Jake
away.
kept coming back
He did,
because
actually.
he got free bread. The Steve Smith, Usman Khawaja. Those are the other two
those are the-
where there's there's a look. There's a little bit of scrutiny. They're closer to the end than the beginning.
Yep.
They presumably both want to try to get through to at least the home Ashes in a year's time. Maybe even for Smith, maybe even another England trip to see if he could, be part of an actual winning series over there instead of a retaining team, which he's done twice now, but which, like he said in 2019, didn't feel as good
Yep.
as actually winning the thing. Or does he chuck it in at some point? I don't know. There's a lack of he just doesn't feel right, but he hasn't felt right to me for probably 5 years, really since that 2019-20 Australian summer when they got back from England. Really, since then, he's never had the same intensity as he had during his peak period, which was only 4.5 years.
Yeah. I'm a little surprised that Steve Smith hasn't made a big score this summer, because I've rarely seen him so much in tune with his batting as he was in the lead up to this summer. I mean, I saw him for the first time before the Adelaide ODI in the nets here, and by day 2, he was so happy with his hands and his feet and his legs and his head and everything else, to the extent he was telling himself that. I thought that was a great sign. And even the couple of innings we saw during the one-dayers, everything was coming off the middle of the bat. And I was very confident that he's going to go ahead and dominate this summer. And I saw signs of it in that second innings in Perth, and it took a really good delivery from Siraj to get him out. But the way he got out here, more so than the first ball of the first ball of the series, Jasprit Bumrah, that happened. But the way he got out here, and there were a couple of
leg side. I mean, the leg side thing, people always go, it's unlucky. I've never really subscribed to that because you're still making a mistake.
Oh, yeah.
But I suppose there is an amount of, like, you're gambling. When you leg glance, you're gambling that you'll get enough on the ball to send it past the keeper, and sometimes you don't.
And also, technically speaking, if you go back to Steve Smith at his peak, his hips would swivel, and those are the balls he would hit through square leg. And that, I think...
rather than fine.
Exactly. And I don't know whether it's his back that is the reason that his hips don't swivel as often, or the fact that maybe it's his eye that he gets hit on the pads a lot. Like, go back to his peak, and we both saw a lot of him at that point. He scored so many runs to square leg without ever getting hit on the pad. Now the fact that he also gets hit on the pad, you'll see a lot of his flick shots go to the left of square leg, more in that mid-wicket region.
And even from that 2019 period on, he got caught behind square a lot, playing to the leg side in the air. So whether that's to the keeper or to a leg gully or to a square leg, those catches have been coming.
Yeah, very much so. So but I still am confident that I still think he's hitting the ball as well as he hasn't in for a while. So it's still 3 test matches to go. Maybe he will make it happen.
He was drilling him in the nets before this test match, but nobody bowled anything on his hip. It was all outside off stump. So he was going through the offside really convincingly, but it's that getting tucked up sort of area that has been a point of struggle. Okay, I think we have done enough. I think we've talked about what we need to talk about. Thanks to CBUS Super as well, who also sponsor the show. 40 years of superannuation, looking after Australians in their retirement. Sort out your super, cbussuper.com. Past performance, not a reliable indicator of future performance. That's it. Geoff Lemon, Bharat Sundaresan. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks to all the patrons who support the show. If you want to go to patreon.com/thefinalword, that's where you can back what we're doing so we can make episodes like this, sitting on the beach on a lovely day. If you're listening to the audio, then you can go to YouTube and have a look at the background of gorgeous beautiful. Adelaide. And there's a reason why you fell in love with this city in there. Okay, that's enough from us. We'll see you next time.
Kabaddi, kabaddi, kabaddi.